Hello everyone. In this session, we are going to learn how to configure AWS Single Sign-On with Azure Active Directory. Let's quickly jump into a demo and then see how this configuration is done. I'm in my AWS console where I'm going to configure AWS Single Sign-On. AWS Single Sign-On is a region service, so you need to make sure that you have selected the right region that you want to deploy this. You will have later implications where you want to deploy this. Enable AWS Single Sign-On. It can take a few seconds before it is being enabled. Once it is enabled, we will jump into its configuration and set it up for Azure Active Directory. In AWS Single Sign-On configurations, go to Settings and change the identity source. By default, it is set up to AWS Single Sign-On. Select External Identity Provider. This will give you some metadata file that you need to download and upload into Azure AD. You first need to select which Azure Active Directory that you are going to select. If you look at the costing, you will find that it's pretty expensive. Instead of paying $590 per month, what I did was I purchased Microsoft Office 365 Business Basic. And instead of going for higher paying SKUs like Business Premium or 365 E3, I went for Business Basic and then selected an additional Azure Active Premium P1 added into my service. Now this add only extra $8.20 per month per user. So this way you can test easily your Azure Active Directory configurations. In my Azure portal, I'm going to search for Azure AD. Go to that. Make sure that your Azure AD has Azure AD Premium P1 or P2 subscription. That is what allows you to do the single sign-on. What I'm going to do is to configure this one to enable AWS Single Sign-On. To do that, under Manage section, you will find something called Enterprise Applications. Go into that. And I'm going to add a new application. Search for AWS Single Sign-On. You will find something like this. So select that. Now this is AWS Single Account Access. That's not what we want. What we want is this AWS Single Sign-On. So select this one. Make sure that you select the right one. This is AWS Single Sign-On. Create that application. It will take some time for it to provision it. Once it is provisioned, you can go back to in Azure Active Directory, Enterprise Applications, and then check how it has been configured. Now you may get an error like this, not found. That's perfectly fine. What you need to do now is to go into your Azure AD and then go into Enterprise Applications, and you will find AWS Single Sign-On available in this application gallery. If you don't see that, make sure that you select all Enterprise Applications, select any, and then you will see this application. Of course, the next thing to do is to configure this application. So let's go there and then configure this. The first thing you are going to configure is this single sign-on section. So under Manage section of this single sign-on, you are going to click this single sign-on, and I'm going to configure a SAML endpoint. We can upload a metadata file. Now this metadata file, we need to get it from the AWS Single Sign-On. So let's click Upload Metadata File. And where can we get this file? We need to go into AWS Single Sign-On. And when you select the external identity provider, part of the configuration it gives you is this AWS Single Sign-On SAML metadata. download that file, and then this file we are going to upload into Azure AD. So let's add this file. So browse it from here. We have this file that we just downloaded, and then I'm going to open it. Now add the file. Now this is going to configure some URLs. That's all fine. All what you need to do is to click save, and it will configure these URLs. Now configuration is done. Click close, click close. Now as you can see that there are few URLs it won't configure. So what you can do is to go and click edit and then edit those URLs. The first one we are going to fill is this identifier or entity ID. Now to find that, you need to find the corresponding URL. It gives you a pattern. So as you can see here, the pattern is HTTPS, AWS region, sign in awsamazon.com platform/SAML. Now this URL is available, although it's already filled through the metadata file we have uploaded. But for some reason, let's say you didn't get these details, you can find it from, go to AWS SSO, show individual metadata values. Now you need to look for this pattern. Now what we were looking for is that platform SAML/D976, this number. Now this URL pattern seems to be the correct one. So I'm going to copy it and then go into this one, make sure that pattern is right. Yes, so I'm going to paste it. Now this is already filled with the same value already exists, so you cannot of course paste it. And you need to of course fill this reply URL or assertion consumer service URL or ACS URL. So as you can see that it is not filled when we uploaded the metadata file. So we are going to fill this value also. So the pattern is platform SAML ACS ID. So let's go and then select that. So you can see ACS URL. So if you look at this one, it's SAML ACS, the ID. So it looks good. Let's copy it. Let's copy here, paste it here, and then save it. That looks right. And then finally the sign-on URL. Now this has to be the correct sign-on URL. So again, go here. The sign-on URL is here. Now this is the sign-on URL. This is what the users are going to log in into. Copy that and then paste it here and then click save. So close this one. So now the configuration is done, but you don't see these updated values. You of course need to refresh the page. Once you refresh the page, you can see that all the things are properly updated. So you will get all this basic SAML configuration up and running. If you haven't configured that one correctly, you can always edit it. So once you've done that, you need to download the federation metadata file from Azure Active Directory. So this federation metadata file you need to upload into AWS Single Sign-On. So if you go into AWS Single Sign-On, you'll find identity provider metadata file. So this, you need to upload the AWS Single Sign-On metadata file you downloaded from Azure Active Directory. Next, go for review, click accept. So that will configure the Azure Active Directory, all the endpoints, certificates. You now need to define which users are allowed to access this AWS Single Sign-On enterprise application. So add user groups, select the users, that you have assigned. So in this case, I'm going to select one of the users I have in my Azure AD and then select and then click assign. So once the user is added, this user can access the AWS Single Sign-On application. Enabling automatic provisioning allows you to automatically synchronize Azure AD users and groups. So I copy this SCIM endpoint and then going to set up Azure AD provisioning. So you go to Azure AD, select provisioning, and then click Get Started. I'm going to select a provisioning mode as automatic and then set up the tenant URL and point it into the SCIM endpoint that I got from SSO. Then I'm going to copy the access token and then paste it in the secret token and then test the connection. If the connection is successfully established, you can save the provisioning. So once you set up the provisioning, it allows Azure AD to access AWS Single Sign-On. So all set up, let's go into AWS Single Sign-On. What I'm going to do now is, as you can see, it's not synchronized. So I'm going to start the provisioning. So this will run for some time, depending on the size of your Azure AD, it will take some time. So all looks good. If you have any issues, you can see some details here. You can see the provisioning logs if you have any issues. If you go into the provisioning now, it's set up to SCIM. If you try to add the users here, you can't because the users are now coming from Azure AD. But once they are synchronized, you can of course remove users. So let's go into AWS accounts, and then I'm going to set up one of these users to access this account. So in my organization, I have a couple of accounts. What I'm going to do now is to select some accounts and then assign users. So these users can be users or groups. As of now, I have some users instead of groups. So let's select this user. So I have the user. And then I'm going to click next permission sets. I'm going to create a new permission sets. As of now, I don't have any permission. So that grants different access rights into AWS. Of course, you can customize these permissions, but I'm just going to use a standard one. In this case, the billing. So that gives access to AWS billing related console and APIs. You can also set up multiple accounts instead of one account and then assign multiple permissions. So the users can assign access based on different access requirements. So in this case, I'm going to set up database administrator and billing. So when they log in, they have different roles that they can assume based on their need. So you need to wait until this provisioning is complete. And now let's go into proceed AWS accounts. So billing and database roles are now set up. The next thing I'm going to do is to sign out from Azure AD and then give you a demo how this login going to look like. So the sign-in URL is this user portal URL. You need to copy it and then let's paste it in one of these browser tab. So that will point me now into Azure AD login. So I'm going to enter my email address and the password and then click sign in. And it will do the SAML authentication and then redirect me into AWS Single Sign-On console. As you can see, I now have 2 accounts, and if you expand it, you will find that there are 2 roles that I can assume. So access with the billing role, and if you go into something like EC2, you will find that EC2 you don't have access to that. That's why you get API errors. But if you log in into the billing section of your AWS console, you can easily sign into that. So that concludes the demo.